Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, February 28th. If you were just tuning in, we just went over what happens with Travis Hunter. Will Travis Hunter be a two-way player at the next level? We talked all about that. In this segment, we turn our attention to our continuing series, The Perfect Offseason, a dream offseason. Today, taking a look at the Green Bay Packers. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, February 28th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Green Bay Packers and what a perfect offseason might look like for them. This is a Green Bay Packers team that went 11-6 last season, finished third in their division at 11-6. That was a stacked NFC North last year. And like we said, lost in the wild card round to the Philadelphia Eagles. They got absolutely stomped. They couldn't get anything done offensively. They turned the ball over a couple times, and they just got absolutely demolished. They have a pretty middling amount of cap space, sitting at $48 million, good for 14th in the NFL. But the Packers also have one big question. What are they going to do with Jaire Alexander? It's come out that Jaire Alexander is expected to ask for a trade, expected to be on the trade block. Jaire Alexander is due $24 million against the cap this season. That would raise their cap space all the way up from that 14th spot in the league. If they add that $24 million back to it, they raise their cap number all the way to $74 million. That would be good enough for right behind the Cardinals. Cardinals who have $78 million. That would be good enough for top 6 in the NFL. That would be 6th place in the NFL. That would be huge. That would allow them to go out and do a whole lot more. Now, obviously, that is the big question. Jaire Alexander, who's one of the best corners in football when he's healthy, but he hasn't been healthy that often. There's plenty of teams out there that could use corners. I look at the Commanders, who made a big trade for Marshawn Lattimore. That would be a deadly duo over there. The Jets, I don't know how interested they'd be in trading for him, but pairing him next to Sauce Gardner would be really nice. You have a couple other teams that could really use a corner. There's a little bit of a corner deficiency in the NFL nowadays, but Jaire Alexander, someone that didn't really love playing with the Packers, it seems like, is probably going to be a little bit picky about wanting to go to a good team. So maybe the Chargers are one that comes to mind. The Chargers have the money for it. The Chargers are a team that made the playoffs, have looked really good under Jim Harbaugh since he came over last season. That's someone that I think might be pretty good for Jaire Alexander, but it's going to take a good amount. Jaire Alexander's still an elite player in the NFL, and the Packers aren't going to let him go for nothing. It also leaves them pretty weak at the corner position, as they have not just him, but they have two corners who are free agents, and Eric Stokes and Corey Ballentine. Now, Stokes got a good amount of snaps, playing nearly 50% of the snaps last season. Corey Ballentine didn't get too many, but he's a pretty good depth piece. Outside of those two corners, A.J. Dillon, who was injured last season, did not play as a free agent, probably going to be able to let go. Their starting center, Josh Myers, is a free agent, and that's an interesting one because the Packers were really good when it comes to the run game, and Josh Myers really good when it comes to the run game, but when it comes to the pass game, he gave up the third most pressures at the center position in the entire NFL, and he hasn't been great at that point. But he's someone that it's hard to lose a starting center in the NFL. There's not a lot of centers out there right now to go and replace him with, especially in this draft. Josh Myers is someone that might be pretty crucial for them to bring back this offseason. You also have linebacker Eric Wilson, kicker Brandon McManus, linebacker Isaiah McDuffie, and defensive tackle TJ Slayton, all as unrestricted free agents. These guys are all going to be free to go where they want. The Packers with a lot of money, I think it'd be good to keep that defense together. One of their biggest weaknesses, and probably the thing that kept them from being true Super Bowl contenders last season with the team they had, was the fact that they didn't have a true pass rush threat, right? So if they don't want to lose that weak off defensive line, maybe bringing back a guy like TJ Slayton would be important for them, right? Now, also, it was a weak defensive line. So you don't necessarily need to bring him back, but this is a big need for them in the offseason. In fact, so that's the biggest one. That's where I want them to spend all of their money and their draft picks if they're willing to do that. The other one that's interesting is wide receiver Bo Melton. He's a exclusive rights free agent this year. Bo Melton, who's kind of acted as a wide receiver 3 through 5 for this team. They've got a lot of those guys on the roster, a lot of those guys on their team. Bo Melton is a little bit expendable, honestly. He's probably the worst of the bunch, but not really by a wide enough margin that I feel comfortable saying that. But Bo Melton probably going to be let go this offseason unless they can bring him back on a cheap deal. But they do need to get a true wide receiver 1 as well. When we talk about free agents, right? One of the big things that I'm really interested in is Myles Garrett. I know he's not a free agent, but if they can pull off a Myles Garrett trade with the Browns don't seem interested in trading Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is absolutely not interested in staying with the Browns. The Browns offered him a contract that would have made him the highest paid defender in the NFL. He said no. He needs to go. The Packers are in the NFC, which ticks off one of the boxes if you're the Browns. I don't see the Browns trading him in the AFC. They've got the money for him. That would be huge. They could even get back Jair Alexander and probably a first-round pick if they wanted to get this deal done. That's a pretty good haul for Myles Garrett. I know they said that they aren't going to give him up. It's going to take more. If someone offered 2 first-round picks, they wouldn't pick up the phone. But Myles Garrett for Jair Alexander, a first and a third, I think that would be fair. That is a lot to give up for a guy, but I do think it's worth it because Myles Garrett is a difference maker. If you can go out, even if you don't get Myles Garrett, even if you do get Myles Garrett and get another elite pass rusher, spend a lot of money there, go and get Hassan Reddick, who's been near the top of the league in sacks when he plays. Go and get Josh Sweat coming off of a Super Bowl. Go and get one of those 2 guys, or maybe both if you don't get Myles Garrett. You also need a true wide receiver 1. Go hard at T. Higgins. Try and trade for him if the Bengals decide, hey, this isn't worth it, which they probably will or should. Stephon Diggs is available. I know that's a little bit more of an iffy situation, but I really do think that bringing in a guy like Diggs, a veteran presence who has the ability to be a wide receiver 1, would be huge for them. And lastly, a corner to replace Jair Alexander. I look at a DJ Reed. They've got the money to spend, especially if they move off of Jair Alexander. They can go out and get some big-name guys this offseason. When it comes to the draft, they pick at number 23. There's a couple guys to look at. Obviously, edge rushers are super important. If Mykel Williams from Georgia is available there, you snatch him up. At corner, Jahdae Barron. He's someone that's been rising on draft boards, but he might be available at 23. If not, I don't really know if you take a corner in the first round. And then the wide receivers. It's going to be a question mark. I've seen drafts where Luther Burden out of Missouri and Emeka Egbuka fall all the way to the late teens. Maybe the Packers find a way to trade up there. Grab one of those guys if they want to get a true wide receiver 1 like Josh Jacobs had asked for. But maybe Egbuka falls, maybe Luther Burden falls. We see what happens at 23. That's kind of like the edge of their range anyway. I don't think they get to him. But if they can get those guys, it would be a steal at pick 23. Overall, this is a Packers offseason that I think is kind of really important, right? This is a Packers team that has been a top team in the NFC with Jordan Love. Jordan Love proved that he was worth that contract, especially at the end of the season when he stopped turning the ball over. Jordan Love has proved that he is a guy that you can rely on. Jordan Love has proved that he is a guy that can lead you to the playoffs and win you games, but you need to get a defense around him, and you need to find him a true number 1 option because as good as Christian Watson is, although he's going to miss a lot of the season, as good as Romeo Doubs is, these guys aren't good enough. As good as Jaden Reed is, these guys aren't good enough for them to rely on as number 1 options. They're all elite number 2 guys. They really are. and they've got a great wide receiver room, but you don't have a true number one alpha in that room, and you need that. You need that if you're the Packers. I think this is the offseason to get it. You've got the money to spend. Why not spend it now? But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think the perfect Packers offseason is? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we shift our attention to baseball. The Pittsburgh Pirates come off a season where they have the new coming of their franchise guy, Paul Skeens, a Rookie of the Year winner, a Cy Young candidate, as well as the rest of that team. We'll see what they do to improve around Paul Skeens this season. We'll talk about that and much more coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.